Connie, so glad to be here with you. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed getting to know you, learning about your life in your creative career, and just grateful that you agreed to be interviewed for MPA's next Maryland Master. So thank you so much. And I'm also grateful that you invited us, the production team, into your studio. We're here on the first floor of your studio, a two-story studio.
Yes,
Lovely. Yes. And upstairs, I know, is what you call the shooting studio.
Yes.
Where you work your magic.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, let me just say to you, I'm so honored to be your subject for the Maryland Masters program. It's such an honor for me, so I'm very touched and very pleased.
Thank you so
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's begin.
Okay.
My first question is just going to be, how did this all begin? Your creative journey. Where did this begin?
It started. I was kind of a sullen teenager in the '60s. I wasn't really good at anything, and I was like a straight C student, and kind of just hadn't found my place in life. And the summer before my senior year in high school, my mother said, "Why don't you take a photography class at the Maryland Institute?" Kind of out of the blue. It's like, yeah, why would you say that? Show no interest in art or photography or anything. So I did, and I found my people. It was just fantastic. I found that I'm a visual person, a visual learner, and visually oriented, and it made such a difference in my life. And I found people who were other outcasts. So it was a true turning point in my life. So that's what started the whole thing. And after that, I went to the Maryland Institute, and I taught there later for many years.
And I remember you saying something about the language of art and the language of photography is very similar. So could you just, talk a little bit about how you saw that?
That didn't occur to me until a little bit later. When I was young, I think it was the work of Diane Arbus. And when I saw that work, I said to myself, as a young 17-year-old, I said to myself, wow, I didn't know you could photograph those feelings, or you could go that deep in photography. And that got me looking at some painters. And I found the work of the 20th century British painter Francis Bacon. And that work kind of brought me to my knees, because he was saying things in his paintings that I thought I was the only one to feel. And so it was like connecting with somebody else on this really profound level. And I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. So that was, I don't know if that answered your question. That isn't good.
Oh, yes, how it all came to you. And I think that's a really poignant story about how it evolved for you. And at such a young age, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, you found yourself at a very young age, I think.
Yes. Well, it was about time, because I was getting pretty desperate as a young teenager. I was having a rough time. But this being a photographer made my life make sense to me. It's like photographing. It's hard to express, but it was what really gave my life meaning.
Nice. And I then think about your work, so the evolution of your work over time, which has been the human body as your subject through the lens of water and mirror. And so I just like to hear that, how that all began, and why the human body, and why through the lens of water and mirrors. So, yeah. So could you just talk about how that all evolved for you?
Yeah. So in the 70s, anything would go in the 70s, and it did go at MICA. It was a wild time to be at MICA, which is the Maryland Institute College of Art. Um, and we had nude models for our photography class quite often. And I found that photographing the nude was, it's like it gave the opportunity to explore form, this remarkable form that changes. And you can never photograph the same person in the same way exactly twice because it's constantly changing. So exploring the form of the body, but also the body's capable of expressing like psychological, the depth of psychology, feelings, emotions, sometimes ones that we're not aware that we're expressing, and also spiritual. Photographing the body could also be very spiritual, sort of bringing us out of ourselves. And when I think about putting clothes on a model, I think, what on earth? Why would you do that? Because it would anchor the image in time with the clothes, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And the nude is the most popular subject in the history of art. So I'm not the only one who discovered the nude. So it was much easier in the 70s to be a photographer as a human body than it is today, or has been for the last 15, 20 years.
And so why through the lens of water, mirror, the distortion that is so prevalent in your work?
What the reflections do is they disrupt the form somewhat. I mean, it can be a little, it can be chaos, but through that disruption, I find the opportunity for something else to come about. And sometimes that's meaningful, and sometimes it's chaos, and sometimes it's poetic, and most of the time it's telling me there's something a little further along. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. But both water and mirrors give me that opportunity to see the body in a different way. And so that's, to me, that's the key to the whole thing, is being able to see in a different way.
This has been your focus. It's evolved over time. And what I'm curious about is, how do you keep evolving? How do you keep being creative in new ways, using basically the same, the human body, the nude, through the, lens of water and mirror? So how do you, continue? How do you keep it alive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And when I get really bored and stuck, I ask myself all the time, because it's not seeking new subjects. It's not trying to find the subject that is spectacular, because then you're just making a record of something spectacular. But when you're looking and exploring with your eyes, then you have the opportunity to really go deep with your seeing.
I think that a lot of us photographers think about the idea of new eyes, of looking with new eyes, but that's so difficult to really understand when you are in the act of, creating an image. So I think your work has helped me understand how you've evolved in the new eyes that have been developed. So, well, thank you. Yeah. And you've also talked about how your work has been influenced by changing values, societal values, and also changes in the techniques from film to digital. And so do you want to talk a little about that, how you've seen the shape, how has digital shaped your work today or influenced?
Yes, I think most photographers my age went through a crisis during that time. And I was one who was saying, I'm a film photographer. I'm going to stay a film photographer. But it became increasingly difficult because they stopped making the film that I was using and had been using all these years. And then the chemicals, they weren't making the chemicals anymore. So, and I was teaching at the time, and my students were talking about things I had no idea what they meant, JPEGs and TIFFs and all the, like, I'm getting lost here. I'm really getting lost. So I just said, what the heck? I got I think it was a Nikon, one of the first SLR digital cameras, and just started playing around. And the thing that was amazing, because I was black and white, and in digital, you don't have to make that decision until afterwards. So I uploaded the images in color to my computer, and wow, I suddenly started to see color.
So, Connie, we're sitting in front of this marvelous wall of photos of your images that you've created over, I think this year.
This is about a month.
About a month. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. And I thought it would be a good time to look at an image, and you can describe the image. And but what I would like to do is to know how you created it. And this would be sort of what you do when you're in the studio working with your models. And so introduce us to the image.
Well, it's all about reflections. I'm working in my studio upstairs, and I have a giant piece of plexi. It's clear plexi, but I can, with the right lighting, I can get a good reflection off of that plexi. And so I have it upright like this, and I have one model on this side of the plexi and one model on this side. And I can light them very differently because they're on different sides of the plexi. So for instance, in this one, I have the model lit on this side in a very cool light. I just put a cool gel over the model. And then in here, you can see that there's a warm gel over the model. So with the reflection and the one coming through from the other side, I blend them together. So this is actually two people. This is the back of one. Now I have him lit with a rim light. So it's just picking up the edge of his skin there. Yes. So it's a very extreme kind of light. And then I have this model lit more with a softer light, more full on. So I have more of the real form of the body coming through with her, and then just the lines coming through from the back of the other one. So it's all about reflection and lighting, to light the reflection and to light the other model so that they show up. It's what's interesting is that this model has to come into the shadows that are created by the light of this model. So it's tricky, and I'm not sure I could have done this in film because I need such an extreme. The light on this model is so strong so that I can get the reflection, and then the model on this one that's showing through has to be maybe 3 or 4 stops less light. So it's really working with extreme light. Did that explain it?
Well, yes, but I'm sitting here thinking that as I'm, looking at this, and you're describing your technique, how you're doing this, it requires me as the observer to have no eyes.
Ooh, what a compliment. Thank you.
I just felt this. I realized it when I'm looking at it, and as you describe the use of shadows, all of a sudden I saw where the shadow is and how the face of the other model comes through. So yes, and I'm moved by it. And now I'm going to do what I just find so fascinating. It's going to be the question about creativity and to really do a deep dive into what creativity is to you. And, I've heard you talk about intuition and exploration. So could you just talk about it in your words?
Sure, sure. Um, the approach that I take, and we've talked a little bit about this, is exploring the body. So when I go into a shoot, I don't have an image in mind. There's nothing that I'm going for. There's no emotion that I'm going for. And it's nothing about my feelings. I go to, you have such a curious face. It's when I'm shooting upstairs, I'm trying not to think about anything. I'm trying to be as attentive to what my eyes are seeing as possible. And in that way, working with all these reflections, you move a little bit one way or the other, you have a completely different composition. So it requires me to be 100% present to what's going on. And so being 100% present, I'm really letting my eyes lead me. And Joseph Campbell was quoting a medieval poet,
Right.
and said, "The eyes are the scout of the heart," which I think is just magnificent. The eyes are very. It's such a powerful sense, and it goes directly. We can bypass our thinking with our eyes and process material sort of directly into the deeper parts of ourselves. And I call that process intuitive, the intuitive process. And intuition is an interesting word because tuition, we know you pay for knowledge, and intuition is knowledge from within. So, wow. So intuition is really what leads me with these images, and I've come to really trust that process. Intuition can tap into unconscious and deeper. It can go into the part of ourselves that we all share, that Joseph Campbell called the collective unconscious. And when you get to that level, it's profoundly satisfying. It only happens like once a year or so, but it's profoundly satisfying. It's a feeling of connection, of true connection, connection with yourself, connection with other artists. I find some of my work reminds me of paintings that I've seen. And when I see that, I'm overwhelmed with the feeling of connection, because I didn't set out to make an image in the style of so-and-so, but it comes through me. And that's where I feel that profound connection.
As you're describing your process and your creativity, and we've been talking about how it has, followed an arc over time. And a curator I know once said about your work that you're having a conversation with the history of art. I love that.
I loved it too.
Yes, yes.
Because I feel like I am, in a way. I spent a lot of my childhood being dragged through museums and taken to the opera when I was way too young, and I hated all of that at the time. But it has really, truly informed who I am. So I have a lot of art history in my head tucked away someplace. When I work intuitively, it touches into those places. So I find that some of my work reminds me very clearly of other painters' work, other work. And it could be the color, the Renaissance had that Rubens red. Do you know that red is a really deep, beautiful red? And sometimes I find myself working with that red, and it's thrilling to me. And other times I've made an image that reminds me, I've made an image of a scream, and I'm looking at it back there, and it put side by side with some of Francis Bacon's paintings. They're almost identical. I mean, there's so many things about it that are truly astounding.
I would now like to talk about post-processing, which I understand you call articulating. So let's just explore that idea a little bit under, when we're talking about your creativity.
Okay, so because I think of the intuitive process as being led by your eyes and not by your brains, your thoughts, or, influences such as I want to do an image like this, I want to express this feeling, getting rid of all of that and letting my eyes truly lead me. And that taps into a deeper part of ourselves, the unconscious, the subconscious, the collective unconscious. And so I take the attitude that our images are informing us about ourselves. So so I think of post-processing as a very bad word because processing is doing something to the image, but articulating is bringing forth what is in the image. So it's allowing the images to speak to us. It's articulating what our unconscious is saying to us.
Oh, Connie, when I next articulate, I will be thinking your voice will be in my head. So thank you. New eyes and new ways of thinking. So of processing. Thank you so much. Let's, Connie, talk now about more of the technical aspect of your work. So the camera that you use, could you just talk a little bit about your camera? But we have to talk about your vest. Your vest.
Okay. Well, I started using Sony cameras quite a while ago, and I've been using them ever since. They're the mirrorless cameras. My cameras are becoming lighter and lighter the older I get. I used to work with these big old clunky things, but I can't now. But my lenses, I insist on the best lenses, so, they always weigh a ton. So I use either Zeiss lenses or the Sony lenses. Sometimes I prefer the Sony lenses. They have a little bit of, they're a little different than the Zeiss lenses. I'm not sure I could tell you what that difference is. I've never used zooms in my life until the last year. And that's because I'm having trouble being more mobile upstairs. You saw it's very congested up there. There's like 3 or 4 lights on this side, 3 or 4 lights on that side. Everything is dark. It's like a death trap up there. So I'm not as mobile up there. And so I've been using the Zoom lately. I like the Zoom. It doesn't quite have the quality of the fixed lens, but it's pretty. Yeah. So the older I've gotten, the smaller my cameras have gotten. But being a photographer for over 50 years, most photographers will tell you they've got issues with their neck, issues with their shoulders, issues with their back, and I've developed all of those. So holding my camera became a real problem for me. So I've tried lots of different things over the years. I tried this chest pod thing that came out like this, but it weighed on my neck. Then I tried a unipod, but I hated that because I wasn't mobile at all with that. So the latest thing that I've come up with, which I think is actually working, is this vest that I put on in this vest, but it has a slot here. I put my camera on this rig that goes into the slot, and it distributes the weight throughout my body. And basically, I just position the camera where I want it. And it's made such a difference because I'm still mobile. I distributed the weight, so there's much less pain than there used to be. So I'm figuring out how to deal with and being an aging photographer. But, that's one of the ways that we started doing the shooting and then coming down to look at the images because I need that break. So, something would start hurting and aching. And so we got into this rhythm of doing that. of coming down, looking while my muscles, would relax. And then we'd go back up and shoot and then come back down, giving my body a break. But actually, it turns out to be a really important part of our process.
The creativity there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, where we inform one another.
Connie, I know you are so excited about your upcoming exhibition. So let's, share with the audience what is happening at your exhibition, which is a 50-year retrospective at American University Museum in D.C., and it begins in September. September 7th, I think, is the opening.
Yes.
So, yeah, share with us your joy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very, very excited about this. I haven't been exhibiting as very much in the last 20 years. And I've been very selective about exhibiting because it takes a tremendous amount of energy and effort and time away from my work. But I have this opportunity for a 50-year retrospective at American University Museum, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. So I'll have 58 pieces in it, and it goes, the most recent in the show is from 2024. So I have pieces from as early as when I was a student at MICA.
Oh, my goodness.
Teenager.
Yeah.
But you can see.
Want me to hang that for you?
Yes, if you don't.
Okay,
that would be great.
We're going to put it right here.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm a teenager here. And you can see the angst that I had then. The angst that I still have, but I'm a much happier person now than I was then. But you can see my work in this. You can see this as a starting point and where I've come since then, which it just thrills me to think that this image that I made when I was 18 and really miserable, full of angst, that one day would be shown in a museum. It thrills. If I could have said that to that little 18-year-old Connie, what a difference that would have made.
What would you say to her?
Say, it's going to be okay. Look, this piece you're making right now is going to be hung in a museum.
And I feel something when I see it. I do see the angst, and I see the distortion. How did you distort this?
I just sandwiched a picture of myself with a picture of bark of the tree. Yeah. I have another one here.
Well, let me put this up.
Okay.
And we'll
just take this one down.
I love working with this wall that I get to be up here and putting up images. I love it. Okay.
So this one, I just took a picture of myself and I cut it in half. And then I got a little picture of myself, which I think I cut from a negative.
Yes.
And I put it inside. So in the negative carriage is the cut picture of myself. And then, I don't know how I did this. There's a little Connie. I'm going to have to think about how I did that now as I'm explaining it. But anyway, I would do anything to make these images. And I love the idea of this little Connie inside. Just starting to come out. And then one more. And that's horizontal.
Oh, sorry. I didn't look before I did that. Good.
So here I cut a picture of myself in half and put it in the negative carriage along with this image. And then I put tape down on a piece of glass over the paper when I exposed it. But what I like about this is the fact that the two halves coming together and observing myself. And I look so young. It's sort of amazing to think of that I'm still doing it. I'm still passionate about it.
Yeah. The seed, it's the seed. You're seeing the seed of where you are today.
You are.
Yes. That's amazing.
This was the only time when I've altered images
Oh,
in the dark room, because after that, it's all been in camera. Because at that point, the seeing became so important for me, this process of seeing.
yeah.
And there, it was more the process of expressing.
Next. Wonderful. Well, I cannot wait to see the retrospective. I will be there.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm very excited about it.
So, Connie, I'm going to, end by just saying how much I've enjoyed working with you. I just find you so warm and bright, but there's a way you share yourself that has been just a joy for me to get to know you. It's so authentic, and it's just, I feel honored.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. I feel honored the way that you've approached this, that you've taken so much time to really look at my work and to understand my process. It's been a real joy for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.